There was a time when silence was not something to escape, but something to enter. It was not seen as a void. It was not treated as an absence. It was simply a space in which something real could emerge, a space that did not demand attention, but invited it. And more importantly, it was a space we were capable of inhabiting. We did not feel the need to interrupt it. We did not feel the urge to fill it. We could remain there, quietly, without resistance. Today, that condition feels almost impossible. Even a few seconds without stimulation, without movement, without noise, begins to feel uncomfortable. Not dramatically uncomfortable, not painfully so, but subtly, persistently, unsettling. A kind of quiet pressure that builds just beneath awareness. And almost instinctively, we reach for something. Not because we decided to, not because we truly need to, but because we have been conditioned to. A screen, a sound, a voice, anything that interrupts the stillness, anything that prevents the moment from remaining empty. As if silence itself were a problem to be solved. As if stillness were something unnatural. But silence has not changed. It has not become heavier. It has not become more difficult. It has not become hostile. What has changed is our relationship to it. Or, more precisely, our capacity to remain within it, somewhere along the way, quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. We lost the ability to be alone with ourselves, not physically alone. That is easy. We can be surrounded by people, or completely isolated, and still never encounter ourselves. The difficulty is not physical solitude. It is interior solitude. To be present without distraction. To be aware without immediately reacting. To remain without escaping. And now, when that condition appears, even briefly, even accidentally, it feels wrong. It feels like something is missing, like something should be happening, but isn't. And so we correct it. We introduce noise, we introduce movement, we introduce something, anything, to restore the familiar rhythm of distraction. But what if nothing is missing? What if the discomfort we feel is not a signal that something is wrong, but a signal that something is finally uncovered? What if silence is not taking something away, but revealing something that has been there all along? Something we have not wanted to see. Something we have not wanted to face.
Reimagined.
Because silence does not create anything new. It removes what is covering. It strips away the layers of interruption, the constant input, the endless noise, and leaves us with what remains. And what remains is not always peaceful. It is not always clear. It is not always comforting. But it is real. And reality, when encountered without filters, demands something from us. It asks for attention. It asks for honesty. It asks us to stop and actually look. And that is precisely what we have been avoiding. Not silence itself, but what silence makes visible, which is why, the moment everything becomes quiet, we feel the need to escape, not outwardly, but inwardly, back into distraction, back into movement, back into anything. That prevents us from remaining still long enough to truly see. Centuries ago, long before the modern world became saturated with noise, Blaise Pascal observed something deeply unsettling. Not about society, not about technology, but about the human condition itself. He noticed that man, left alone in a quiet room, without distraction, without movement, without interruption, does not find peace. He becomes restless. And from that restlessness, almost everything else begins. Not because silence harms him, but because silence exposes him. It removes the distance between him and what he carries within. And what he carries within is not always something he wants to encounter. Thoughts that were never completed. Questions that were never answered.
Music licensing.
Contradictions that were never resolved. A quiet sense that something is not aligned. And in the presence of silence, there is no way to avoid it, no way to postpone it, no way to cover it, only the mind left to itself, unfiltered, uninterrupted. And when the mind is left unfiltered, it does not immediately become calm. It wanders, it drifts, it returns to the same places, again and again. It circles around what is unresolved, not because it is broken, but because it is unfinished. And so, instead of learning to remain there, to observe, to understand, we learned something else. We learned how to leave, not physically, but mentally. We learned how to escape before anything becomes too clear, before any question becomes too precise, before any realization becomes unavoidable. And over time, this became automatic. We no longer decide to distract ourselves. We simply do it, almost instantly, almost unconsciously. Silence appears, and within seconds, it is gone, replaced by something easier, something lighter, something that requires nothing from us. But this avoidance comes at a cost, because the things we escape from do not disappear. They remain, waiting, accumulating, quietly gathering beneath the surface. And the longer they remain unexamined, the heavier they become. Not always in obvious ways, not always in ways we can immediately identify, but in a subtle pressure, a sense of unease, a background tension that never fully leaves. And so we continue. We continue to fill every moment, to occupy every pause, to ensure that silence never lasts long enough to reveal too much. But this is not resolution, it is delay. And delay does not remove what is unresolved. It only pushes it further away until it becomes harder to face, harder to understand, harder to even recognize. Which is why, when silence finally arrives, it does not feel neutral. It does not feel empty. It feels heavy. Not because silence is heavy, but because what it reveals has been carried for too long. And in that moment, we are given a choice to remain or to escape. And more often than not, we choose to escape, not because we are weak, but because we have never learned how to remain. Long before Pascal, Augustine wrote something even more fundamental, something that does not describe behavior, but condition. Our hearts are restless until they rest in you. Restless, not distracted, not entertained, restless, which means movement without arrival, activity without resolution, a kind of inner motion that never truly comes to an end. And this restlessness does not come from the outside world. It is not created by noise. It is not imposed by circumstances. It is already there, quietly present, beneath everything. Silence does not create it. Silence reveals it. When everything becomes quiet, when the noise recedes, when the distractions fall away, what remains is not immediate peace. It is exposure. The exposure of a heart that has been moving for too long, without direction, seeking something, without fully knowing what, trying to resolve something, without ever stopping long enough to understand it. And so, when silence appears, it does not feel like relief. It feels like interruption. An interruption of distraction, an interruption of movement, an interruption of everything that was keeping us from noticing. And in that interruption, something becomes visible, not clearly at first, not fully formed, but present. A question that has been waiting, a tension that has not been resolved, a sense that something is missing, not externally, but internally. And this is where the discomfort begins. Because what is revealed does not come with immediate answers. It does not resolve itself quickly. It does not disappear simply because we notice it. It remains. It asks to be faced, to be understood, to be followed. And this requires something that we have gradually lost: patience, attention, the ability to remain with something without needing to resolve it immediately. But instead of remaining, we move. We move back into distraction, back into noise, back into anything that allows us to feel occupied again. Because occupation feels safer than exposure, movement feels easier than stillness, and distraction feels lighter than clarity. But this pattern, this constant return to noise, does not remove the restlessness. It sustains it. It gives it space to continue without ever being examined, without ever being understood. And so, the cycle continues. We feel restless. We avoid silence. We fill the space, and the restlessness remains, unchanged, unresolved, until eventually it becomes so familiar that we no longer recognize it as a problem. It becomes normal, the constant need for stimulation, the inability to remain still, the subtle discomfort that appears when nothing is happening. All of it begins to feel like the natural state of things, but it is not. It is the result of a life that has never fully stopped, never fully looked, never fully listened. Because to truly listen requires silence, and to truly see requires stillness, and both require something we have been avoiding: the willingness to remain without escaping, without filling the space, without immediately turning away. And that willingness is the beginning of something entirely different. The modern world did not create this restlessness, but it learned how to use it. It learned how to build around it, to amplify it, to sustain it, and eventually to depend on it. Because a restless mind is easy to engage, easy to capture, easy to keep moving. And movement, in this context, is valuable. Not movement towards something meaningful, but movement itself, constant activity, constant input, constant consumption. A mind that cannot remain still is a mind that will always seek something. And in seeking, it becomes predictable, it becomes responsive, it becomes available. Every moment of quiet is now seen as an opportunity to insert something, a sound, an image, a notification, a distraction, not as an interruption, but as a continuation. Because silence, in the modern structure, is not neutral. It is unused space, and unused space must be filled, not because it needs to be, but because it can be. And over time, this becomes invisible. We no longer notice the absence of silence, because we no longer experience it. There is always something playing, something loading, something waiting, something designed to occupy the next moment. And we accept it, not consciously, but habitually. Because the alternative has become unfamiliar: to sit without input, to remain without engagement, to exist without immediate stimulation. It feels unnatural, not because it is unnatural, but because it has been removed, and in its place, something else has been installed, a continuous stream of partial attention. We are never fully focused, but we are never fully disconnected. We move from one thing to another, without ever arriving, without ever staying, without ever going deep enough to understand anything completely. Thought becomes fragmented, attention becomes shallow, and over time, the mind adapts to this condition. It becomes accustomed to constant change, to constant input, to constant movement. And when that movement stops, even briefly, something feels off, something feels missing. But what is missing is not stimulation, it is depth, because depth requires time, and time requires stillness. It requires the ability to remain with one thing long enough for it to unfold, for it to reveal itself, for it to become clear. But clarity cannot compete with constant interruption. It cannot emerge in a fragmented mind. And so, without realizing it, we trade depth for movement, understanding for stimulation, clarity for occupation. And the cost is not immediately visible. It does not appear as a problem. it appears as normal life. A life that is always active, always connected, always engaged, but never fully present, never fully attentive, never fully aware. And so, the cycle continues. We avoid silence. We fill the space. We maintain the movement. And the restlessness remains, unquestioned, unresolved, quietly sustained by the very structure we have come to depend on. To return to silence is not to return to something comfortable. It is not a retreat in the way we often imagine. It is not an escape from the world. It is a confrontation with everything that has been left unresolved, everything that has been postponed, everything that has been covered by constant movement. And for this reason, silence does not feel peaceful at first. It feels dense. It feels heavy. It feels unfamiliar. Because it removes the distance between us and what is real. It removes the space in which we were able to avoid. And what remains demands attention, not immediate answers, not quick solutions, but presence. The kind of presence that does not look away, that does not rush, that does not escape. And this is difficult, not because it is unnatural, but because it is no longer practiced. We have trained ourselves to move quickly, to respond instantly, to fill every gap, to avoid every pause, and now, to do the opposite feels like resistance. But beyond that resistance, something begins to change. The mind, which was once scattered, begins to gather. Thoughts that were fragmented begin to connect. Questions that were avoided begin to take shape. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, clarity begins to appear, not all at once, not completely, but enough to begin seeing differently, to begin understanding, to begin choosing with intention. Because clarity is not something that can be forced. It is something that emerges when the conditions are right. And silence is one of those conditions, not the only one, but one that cannot be replaced. Because there are things that only appear when nothing else is present. Things that do not compete. Things that do not impose. Things that wait patiently for the moment when we are finally still enough to notice, to listen, to receive. And perhaps what we find there is not something new, but something that was always there, obscured, covered, ignored, but never absent. And this is why silence feels unbearable. Not because it lacks something, but because it contains too much. Too much that we have not faced. Too much that we have not understood. Too much that we have not allowed to fully emerge. But to avoid silence is to avoid all of that indefinitely, to remain on the surface, to remain in movement, to remain occupied without ever becoming clear. And eventually, that becomes a life that is full but never deep, active but never deliberate, connected but never present. And so, the question is not whether silence is comfortable. It is not. The question is whether it is necessary. And the answer, quietly, persistently, is yes. Because without silence, there is no depth. Without silence, there is no clarity. Without silence, there is no real encounter with what is true. Silence was never the problem. It was always the doorway.